Okay, so Wuthering has finally done something that I've been asking for many months now, and honestly, I'm very excited for the future of the game and how they're going to market it, because obviously, if you don't know on this channel, I've covered the advertising quite a bit, and I've talked about many ways that they could advertise their game and kind of get it out to even more people and, get even more players to come over. Now, obviously, a lot of these techniques were ways through like IRL events, which, Wuthering has been stepping up on, and I've covered many of those in the past. For example, like the Osaka event over in Japan, I actually covered that, and that was a very, very good event, and that was one of the main kind of points that I brought up as to how they could actually advertise their game. But another one was through animations, and well, it seems like Wuthering has actually been stepping up their animation game with 2 new advertisements, which I thought could really help out the game in terms of bringing in new players and also just catching the attention of a lot of people, because these 2 animations kind of blew up online. Now, obviously, the first one is a Wuthering collaboration with a company called something or other T. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that. I don't really want to try. I don't want to like butcher it at all. But pretty much they did this animation for this tea company, which I thought was really cool. As you can see here, it's like Carlotta dancing. They kind of include, I think it was just Carlotta and Zani, and also Abby as well. And essentially, this is just an advertisement for tea. This is just a tea advertisement for a collaboration that's going on. This is uploaded by Narishio. Yeah, it's 30,000 views, and yeah, you got that. And then also they move on to Zani, which looks absolutely amazing, by the way. The animation style, although it's a little bit unorthodox, it's like 3D slash a little bit of 2D. I thought it looked pretty cool. Yeah, as you can see there, a pretty cool outfit as well, as we have with all of the other collaborations. And Jesus Christ, she's resting that on the table, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, as you can see, they're kind of including these animations now into some of the advertisements, which I honestly think could bring in a lot more players and could bring in a lot more interest for the game. And then as you can see here, this is some of the kind of stuff that they're selling over at this event, which looks really, really cool. And also just doing collaborations in general and, partnering up with this tea company can really help them out in the long run too, because obviously people are going to go visit and people are going to go, see these kind of collaborations going on at the actual, like IRL event. And, maybe they'll get interested in Wuthering Waves. But also, Wuthering Waves actually released another one, which was a Zani, literally like 30-second insider channel, where they actually go ahead and pretty much they have like a 30-second little animation sequence, which is fully like 2D animated, it looks like. And it looks really cool. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Persona and that kind of stuff with the overall colorization that they've chosen here. But honestly, I thought this was really cool because I've been asking for 2D animation and I've been asking for extra kind of content to do with characters for a very long time. Obviously the T kind of preview looks really cool and it's a very cool thing, but let's be real, it has no significance to kind of, I guess, like promoting a character. Maybe it does kind of promote Zani here, but this one obviously is a clear attempt by Wuthering Waves to actually promote the character, which they haven't really done before. We haven't seen an animation like this before a character release. Obviously this isn't her full trailer or anything. We still got a full trailer to come out in a couple days time, and honestly this is what I said I wanted to see even more. It's great to see these kind of extra little things to kind of get you attached to the characters, not only just to characters like Zani, but I'd also love to see even more animations coming out about the lore, coming out about some of the other character interactions and stuff like that, which could add on, and I think the one gripe that I've had with this animation in general is the fact that it's too short. I think a lot of people said that whenever they reacted to it, is the fact that, this is only 30 seconds. A lot of us wanted even longer because this could be a really cool trailer. It could be a really cool, like, little, animation type thing that people could react to. And honestly, I thought it would be really cool if it was longer. But obviously, yeah, this is like done pretty good as well. It's got 157,000 views in the first day, 21,000 likes. So again, it's still very, very popular among fans, and I feel like it is definitely going to help out in terms of marketing Zani. And yeah, as I said, we still got the combat trailer and the regular trailer. Also, this is Kaz from the future. They actually released the Resonator Combat Showcase, and you can see here they're even using even more 2D animation in this, which further proves my point, as they're experimenting a little bit more with adding 2D animation and stuff to some of the trailers and to just more of what they're doing. And this, remember, is to a combat showcase. This isn't like the full-on trailer or anything, and they're already adding even more into that, into a combat showcase, which honestly looks absolutely amazing. So I'm very excited to see what more they could actually cope with this. But it does seem like Wuthering Waves is actually turning a new leaf whenever it comes to actually switching up what they're doing, which could really help them out in the long run, I think. I feel like, Wuthering Waves has been really struggling recently with a lot of the version 2.3 drama, and, people haven't been very happy with the rewards, and obviously that's going to give them a little bit of negative PR, People aren't happy with the rewards, so people probably are going to start leaving the game. People are probably going to start avoiding the game because they've heard about a lot of the stuff that's gone on. But in actual fact, Wuthering Waves is still fine as a game, I feel like, I don't think, it's lost its story, it's lost its, like, kind of combat or anything like that. The, core game mechanics are still there. Yes, the rewards are disappointing and are quite bad, but obviously a lot of the key gameplay aspects are obviously still there, they haven't changed. And I feel like that's what a lot of people are forgetting. And it's just great to see that, they are trying to do something a little bit different, a little bit out of the norm, because we've seen things with like Genshin Impact and stuff in the past where they've done, similar kind of things, where they've had a complete schedule of trailers and different kind of advertisements that they bring out in a scheduled, orderly fashion, which is great for like a professional standard, obviously, because, they know when everything is coming out in order. But let's be real, it's just not as exciting for a player. It's really exciting to get that random one, like animation thing that looks really cool, has some really cool music, has some really cool animation or whatever that people can get really invested into. And I think that's something that Hoyoverse does really well, is the fact that they do release these kind of random animations which help to kind of improve the popularity of the game. For example, Genshin Impact did one a little bit of a while ago, the Arlecchino thing. I've talked about that before, and essentially it was like the backstory of Arlecchino, but all into like a really cool, like epic kind of animation thing, which looked really amazing. And I feel like this is something that we should have in Wuthering Waves too, not just a 30-second clip of her, like, going insane. Obviously, it still looked very cool. I really liked it. Don't get me wrong. But I would love to see one, talking about Zani's backstory, or even like anybody else's backstory, and going into it a little bit more over on YouTube, rather than finding it out over on the game, because I feel like that could add extra information, especially for a lot of the people who enjoy their lore stuff. Because again, I feel like Wuthering Waves isn't the highest game in terms of lore. I feel like, there's a lot of other gacha games out there which has a much like deeper set of story. Not to say that there isn't any for Wuthering Waves, but I feel like other games do have a deeper kind of meaning, and they have all these like wiki stuff which you can go into. And as I said, you've also got all these animations which can add a little bit more context for people, and I think that would be a really nice thing for Wuthering Waves in the future. And I think they are starting to experiment with it, so I think that hopefully they do go ahead and try to make a lot of these trailers a little bit longer and have a little bit more meaning behind it, because obviously I feel like this one was just to showcase how cool Zani is. Let's be real, and I'm not opposed to that. I think Zani looks absolutely insane. But I do think, in the future, if we have some that, kind of correlate to the story, correlate to something that is going on in the game a little bit more, I feel like it could have more of an effect on the audience and could be something that could get people even more hyped for the game in general. And as I said, all they need to do is follow in the footsteps of Hoyoverse and stuff, and kind of have those extra little animations in there to help people kind of stay engaged with the game, stay engaged with the story, and just stay engaged with the characters in general. Because not only are you engaging people whenever it comes to the story and the actual animation itself, but you're also engaging people with the characters and getting them to know them, which is going to help drive up pool sales and everything like that. Now obviously Wuthering Waves aren't doing too bad on pool sales at the moment. We looked at in the last video, Toolkeeper is actually at the top of the kind of Japanese PlayStation ranking, so a lot of people are pulling. But I do think you could drive that up even more with even more kind of things to do with these characters and that aren't so scheduled. I feel like having scheduled content is fine, but I do feel like you do need those extra things to make it seem like there's more of a little bit of a community behind it, which honestly could help out Wuthering Waves in the long run. But yeah, that's about all I wanted to talk about in this video, just because I found it really interesting. As you know, I've made multiple videos on the advertisement of Wuthering Waves so far and talking about how they can improve animation, but this is definitely the next step towards it, and it seems like they are experimenting with different types of animation and experimenting with different types of trailers and advertisement, which honestly could be very interesting to see in the future, especially for other versions where they can actually implement this. And I'm very excited to see how they can actually do this in the future. We've seen little kind of like tidbits of them kind of implementing it in other trailers. For example, at the start of the Phoebe trailer, they actually included a little 2D animation for a couple of seconds, which I thought was really cool. They also included it in the Cantarella trailer, so maybe they were experimenting with it in like kind of small kind of bites first to see if they could do it, and now I think they're moving on to even bigger projects and even bigger projects, and I hope that this can actually turn into a full-on cinematic that people can go ahead and kind of watch. So yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this. Do you think that Wuthering Waves should be doing more cinematics to advertise their game, or do you think it's not that big of a deal? Honestly, I think it would be a very great addition to the advertisement that they've been doing at the moment, and I hope that I've convinced you that it could be a great thing for driving up sales, but also just for getting the fan base already engaged in a lot of the story and in a lot of the characters. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and also go to GameStop, use my code CASO, get 10% off. Again, they got a ton of really cool stuff over there. I definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. That's all. See ya.